Welcome, everybody. This is Aaron Ossont on Ossont Battery on the Flamekeeper network, and I have a special guest today. I have Andrew DeCagna from Ironflame, Brimstone Coven, many other projects as well. So, which I think is another one. So, welcome, Andrew, to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Awesome. So first, I'd like to just start off with telling my guests a little bit how I got into their music. And I originally heard you with Brimstone Coven, and I love that band. I mean, great, fantastic, doom rock, occult rock band. And then my friend Dwayne said, "Hey, Andrew, the bass player singer, has this power metal band. He does it all himself, and you really got to check it out." And I did, and I was instantly hooked. So that's kind of my story of how I got into Ironflame. So
right on, man. I appreciate it.
First of all, I wanted to ask you, how did you first get into heavy metal, and what was like the first heavy metal band that really kind of you were like, wow, I really need to get into this?
Iron Maiden, most definitely. I was 12 years old, and when you're 12, you just I feel like that was the age of the discovery of music for a lot of people.
Definitely.
And before that, you're interested in kid stuff, and as was I. And I think I had a neighborhood kid, and when you're a kid, you didn't have money, so you traded stuff, right? So I can't even remember what this neighborhood kid wanted of mine, but he offered me the latest Iron Maiden cassette, which was Seventh Son. It didn't have a case or anything. It was just the cassette. And I said, okay, sure. And I had a tape player. And I popped it in, and my mind was blown, and my world was changed forevermore. And a weird, quirky fact about that, discovering that band and that album, for some reason, it took me probably 6 months to get to side 2 of that album for some reason. I don't know why, but I vividly remember just listening to side 1 and rewinding it and listening and rewinding and rewinding and rewinding. And then being like, oh yeah, there's another side to this album. And then finally flipping it so much longer after I'd heard the first side. But yeah, from there it was, it was a lot of things, but Iron Maiden was definitely the first one. And when I fell in love with that particular album, my cousin, who was about the same age as me, had an older brother, and his older brother worshipped Iron Maiden. So not long after I got Seventh Son, my cousin turned me on to the whole back catalog. And I was pretty much a fanboy ever since. I still am.
I hear that. Now, did you initially, how old were you when you started playing music? When you became a musician and started playing?
Probably 14 or 15. I picked up an instrument for the first time. My sister's boyfriend turned husband at the time was a bass player and keyboard player. And he worshipped all the people you would expect, Van Halen and Rush especially, and he turned me on to Rush. And I expressed an interest in, playing an instrument, and he's like, well, I have, 1,000 basses. I'll just let you use one of my basses. You can just mess around with it. So he gave me one of those Steinberger Aliens. Have you ever seen those basses? They're the ones with yeah, real little body. So it was perfect for my small frame, actually. And I found out then and there that I was also left-handed. So it was easy for me to flip over. I didn't have some big wonky body, upside down body to deal with. So, but I had to learn how to play upside down, but I didn't even really think about that. I just started plucking around, and I think by that time I'd started getting into more underground stuff like thrash, and I was into crossover a lot, like DRI and MOD, the Minor Threat. So those particular bands were all very bass guitar driven, tons of really tasty bass riffs to choose from, and it didn't take me long, just fumbling around on the neck before I started finding riffs from those bands. And I think that's pretty much the same story as everybody else who didn't take a lesson. You get that little fire, you get that little taste, you learn a riff or two, and it just kind of fuels that fire to learn more stuff. So that's basically how it started.
Now, what was the first band you were in? Was it a metal band? Was it like a hardcore band, punk band?
It was a cover band that played all metal stuff. I believe we were called Aftermath. And it was just me and junior high school buddies, and we had pretty high ambitions. We were trying to play like Metallica and Slayer and Megadeth and Pantera, Testament, like all these really skilled advanced bands that we really couldn't play, but we tried. And because of that, all the other pardon me, bands that were our peers at the time were doing like Danzig and I think I don't know if you remember a band called Ugly Kid Joe. They were doing really a lot of easier stuff because we were kids and we weren't talented. But we were trying for the technical stuff, and we were respected because of it, I guess. And I did that for a couple of years before I got into an original band. The first original band that I got into was a black metal band called Dethroned. And I got into that, I believe, in like 94, 95. But my first band was probably 92, 93.
Now, I primarily know you from Brimstone Coven. That's where I first heard you. How did that band come about? That's where I first heard you.
Corey Roth is the brainchild behind Brimstone. And I've been in bands in one form or another with Corey since the early 2000s. We knew each other as musicians in other bands for a few years, and then I can't even remember what we decided to collaborate on first. I think it was just a little drum machine demo kind of project. We said, why don't we work together on this? You play this and I'll play this. And from there, we got into a band called Wilderkin that was more like beer drinking Southern rock, like a dirtier, nastier Clutch type band. Him playing drums and me playing guitar. And then from then on, we were just always in bands. My main gig at the time was a melodic death metal band called Angel Rust. And that band reached a point where I just didn't want to play guitar anymore and sing. So I brought Corey in to play guitar for that. And then I was just the vocalist. And then it reached a point in the late 2000s, right around 2010, where I was juggling a lot of bands, and I think I just bit off more than I could chew, and I got really kind of fed up and jaded with being in bands at all. So I kind of cut off ties with pretty much everything I was doing musically, and was doing that for about 6 months. And that's right around the time that Corey got the idea for Brimstone, and he approached me with it, and I said no. I'm just not into being in a band right now. And he said okay, and he tried to form with some other people, and it didn't work out. And then he wanted me to sing on it, and he gave me a demo. I demoed some vocals, but I didn't feel like I was the right fit for it. So I gave it back to him and said, hey man, thanks for thinking of me, but I don't think I'm right for this. It just doesn't really fit. And he's like, oh, okay. And then he told me who else was involved. And the guy he had playing bass, I knew John was a singer too. And I was like, well, why don't you have John sing and I'll play bass, but no commitments. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want this to turn into a big thing. And he's like, don't worry, man. The second you want to pull the plug on it, we'll pull the plug on it. Or you can walk away. You can do whatever you want. And that was 2011. So here we are. We're working on our like fifth or sixth album. I lost track. Yeah. So I mean, but the thing is it's always been chill and it's always been laid back, and it's been a really cool ride. You know, we were on some really venerable labels down the line, and went from there to being independent, and then back on labels and independent again. It's been a cool ride, and the record we're working on now, I feel like, is the best thing we've ever done. I know everybody says that about their new album, but you know.
Awesome, awesome. Now, that how did you come up with the Ironflame? Is that something that you'd always had? Kind of, you had these songs, or was it a
No,
project you had an idea for and you just had to get it out? Or
no, I was in another what you would call traditional metal band called Dofka. That was the brainchild of Jim Dofka, who's the guitar player. And this was, I was in there from maybe '07 to 2010, something like that. Well, anyway, um, we had a sound guy, like a dedicated sound guy that would do all the sound at our shows, and his name was Chris. And he was a great singer himself. He had like Dio level pipes. He was awesome. Anyway, in 2016, he suddenly passed away, and Dofka reunited to play a benefit show to pay for his funeral expenses, basically, or help pay for his funeral expenses. And that benefit show put, along with Chris's passing, put a lot of things in perspective for me. Number one, it made me realize I miss singing metal in a metal band. And it really made me think of Chris. And I thought that, you know, when people pass away, you get guilty, you know, about little things. And I just felt like Chris would be disappointed in me that I wasn't using my voice for heavy metal. So I was like, I need to do something for him and to help me cope with this. So that first Ironflame album was just that. It was just meant to be a therapeutic release that I was doing in honor of my friend. And I just was planned on making a couple of copies of it once it was done and selling it to a couple of buddies around my area, and then not thinking any more about it, honestly. And when I was getting it made, I wanted to get vinyl made because vinyl was really hot. But vinyl was expensive, and I wanted to make sure that I sold all the copies. So I made a campaign, you know, and put it up on YouTube, and very quickly, like, it got noticed by a couple of YouTube channels that host nothing but traditional heavy metal, and it kind of started to blow up. And before I know it, I was asked to play Keep It True in Germany, and so it kind of had to form into something that was a huge opportunity, and I wasn't going to waste that. So I formed a band, and again, you know, when I formed that band, I was very picky about the people that I chose to play on it or on stage with it, and said to those guys, like, look, guys, we're just going to do a couple of shows, no heavy commitments. Let's just ride this wave and see where it goes. And that was 7 years ago. So here we are now talking about it. So time flies and things happen. So,
I mean, it's one thing that I like about Iron, and I'll say this, is that there's a lot of bands that I've noticed. I'm been into heavy metal for almost 35 years now, and there's a lot of musicians who play fast or play all sorts of crazy notes, but not so many people have great songwriting, and the songwriting on all the albums is so phenomenal. From like every track, everything is so catchy. What I like to say is Iron Flame's the type of band where if you have like a shitty earworm song in your head, like I put on some Iron Flame to get it out, you know.
right on. Well, that's a very high compliment, and I appreciate that.
Now, my first what I got into was for Splendid and Sorrow. I love that album. Now, has Iron Flame always been just you in the studio, and then you play with other guys live, or?
As far as the recording process goes, yes and no. Yeah, mainly yes. It's always been the same formula of me doing 95% of the instrumentation and the vocals. The only things that I never ever do because I'm incapable of doing are the guitar solos. I can't play a guitar solo to save my life, and I acknowledge that. And thankfully, I'm surrounded by a bunch of talented people. So that first album, I saw it as an opportunity to make it kind of like an all-star cast as far as the guitar players went. So there was 8 songs, and I chose 4 local guitar players to do 2 songs each. Aaron Carey, who's my good friend and bandmate in the Chachwin, John Crow, who's a local musician, Justin Wood, who was the one-time drummer in Brimstone Coven, and Jim Dofka. They did the solos on that one, and then on Tales of Splendor and Sorrow, I wasn't sure if I could get everybody to play guitar. Jim was really into it, so I just had Jim play all the solos for that album. And then by that time, the live lineup that you see now was solidified, and we had bonded. And I felt, why not use them? They're great guitar players, and why don't I let them flex their skills? So from Blood Red Victory on, it's been Quinn and Jesse handling all the guitar solos on the recordings.
Now, when you do writing for Ironflame, do you already have like a song fleshed out in your head, or do you just kind of have like a bunch of riffs and you try to put them all together?
Never. I went about it a couple of different ways over the years, but the first couple were I just kind of puked them out, and nothing was changed. Like I didn't add a song or delete a song. Just what came out was what came out, and I didn't change anything. And then that was for the first 2 albums. And then by the time Blood Red Victory came around, I started to think, am I selling myself short here? What would happen if I did write other songs? And then, I don't know. Back in the day, reading interviews with bands, I remember so many bands saying, "Oh, well, we wrote 18 songs this time, and we cut it down to 10 or 12 songs for the album." And I always thought that was fascinating, how you could just take songs and then just like throw them away. But I tried it for Blood Red Victory and did just that. And I'm trying to think of how many songs I did. I probably did 20 to 24 songs and just looked at them face value. I did. Now we're talking musically here. We're not talking completely fleshed out with vocals. I just looked at them musically and felt, okay, well, this one really complements this one, and this one kind of works with this one. So I just kind of would use that process until I had an album's worth that fit together, and then I'd put the vocals on, and that's what Blood Red Victory was.
Nice.
This one, this new one, I did even more extreme, and I think I wrote maybe 36 or 37 songs musically. Yeah, and then cut those down to 10. Yeah, so it's been a different way throughout the years.
Crazy. Now, next thing I wanted to ask is some of the influences that you have for Ironflame. I think we know some of them because you did do a covers EP. I remember. I think it was a limited, and that had one of my favorite songs on it, "Castle Walls" by Styx. I'm a huge Styx fan.
Same.
Always
Same.
been.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the other influences that you have from Iron?
Well, Styx was a big influence. That was one of the albums that my sisters left behind when they moved out of the house, and was that particular album, The Grand Illusion. So that was a super influential album to me, and it still is. To be honest, I mean, I'm influenced by everything, and all those bands growing up, Rush and Uriah Heep, and like a lot of 70s bands, Black Sabbath, and a lot of the traditional 80s stuff too. But I don't feel honestly that my style, as far as the way I riff and stuff, is really, I don't hear a lot of that influence when I listen to it, and I'm obviously biased, but when I listen to my riffs, I hear the stuff that I grew up with a little later when I became addicted to like Scandinavian death metal and like that second wave of black metal, like the really melodic black metal. Those are the things that I feel when I listen to it. I'm like, oh yeah, that I totally ripped that off of like Abagor, or I was totally thinking about like the second Dimmu Borgir album when I came up with this part, Old in Flames and Dark Tranquility, all that old Swedish stuff. Um, those are the things that I really hear personally as far as like influences on my sleeve that I hear in my playing when it comes to Ironflame. So that may be surprising to some people. I don't know.
Nice. Now, let's talk about the new album that you got coming out. I've been excited for it because I got all your albums. As soon as I see something that's coming out, it's like I got to get that. So, what's the new album called? When will it be coming out and stuff like and how do we get it?
Okay, it's called Kingdom Torn Asunder. It comes out in about a month. Well, I don't know when we're doing this. We're doing this now. It comes out for about a month from now. So July 26th is when it comes out. And it comes out on High Roller Records, just like the previous album, Where Madness Dwells. We're doing an album release party for it the day of in Morgantown, West Virginia, with our good friends Ladybeast. As far as the album goes, I'm going to tell you a little interesting fact that the album is actually a little older than the previous album. It was actually written and recorded in the fall of 2019 when we came back from our first European tour. I wrote all these songs and recorded them, and that was supposed to be the next album. But a lot of things happened in the beginning of 2020. The pandemic was obviously the big one. My best friend and business partner passed away suddenly from cancer. And so a lot of negative stuff is going on around me. And you'll listen to the new album, and it's not a very negative album. It's a pretty triumphant, pretty positive sounding album. And to me, it just wasn't right for the way I was feeling up here. And I don't know. I was working on it, and like I said, it was the plan to release it, and then all of a sudden these emotions welled up in me, and another batch of songs came out that ended up being Where Madness Dwells. And to me, it was much more important to release that one at that moment than to put this one out. To me, this one, I felt like I didn't relate to it because of the things that were going on in my life. And, because the pandemic was global, I kind of felt like maybe other people were feeling the same way that I was on some level. And that these darker, angrier songs that I composed for Where Madness Dwells might resonate a little more with the world at that moment compared to these ones. So I shelved this one. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I was going to put it out or not. But now I feel like the fog is cleared around the world. Everybody's in better mind states. The world is in a better state as far as that goes. We're pretty much back to normal when we're talking about, touring and things like that. So I don't know. It just felt like now was the time to release this one.
Now, talking about stuff that inspires your writing, I've noticed that in some of your writing, like songs like "The Great Defender" and "Orpheus." Now, are those about specific people, or is that more just like a character in general? Or did you have a specific person in mind when you wrote those songs?
So Orpheus was about the god of music, the god of song, because originally Tales of Splendor and Sorrow was intended to be an EP, and it was going to be all based on Greco-Roman mythology. If you notice, there's more songs like that, thematically speaking, on that album. Hands of Fate is about Nemesis. Sword and Shield Divided We Fall is basically about defending the Isle of Crete. That was going to be the theme for Tales, and it just ended up being a full-length album. But Our Great Defender is actually a tribute to Dio. If you read into the lyrics of that,
that's what I thought. I had always thought that. I didn't want to come out and say it and like be like wrong, but
it totally is. Yeah, you can. Yeah, I think you can tell by the little intro, thing that I do there that it's dedicated to him. And then I tried to ape his voice. I mean, I'm no Dio, nobody is, but I tried to ape his voice as much as possible, like on the verses, just to kind of give a wink and a nod to that.
It was funny. I always tell people I actually found out I'm kind of related to Dio.
Yeah.
It turns out my mom's cousin's ex-wife was his cousin.
No way. Dude, that's metal.
Related, right?
Yeah, dude, that's like the closest relation I've ever heard or talked to anyone who was that close to Dio in bloodline. That's rad, dude.
She used to send my mom like pictures of him at like family parties and stuff, and it was kind of cool to see him just like hanging out,
That is incredible, dude.
Because I'm from my family's originally from upstate New York. Like he's from
Isn't he from Jersey?
He's from Cortland, New York.
Okay, all right.
New York.
Yeah, for some reason I thought Jersey, but
yeah,
that's rad, dude. That's a totally cool story.
Now, do you guys have any plans with touring coming up, or I actually think you're going to be playing around me, in September, I believe, or something like that.
Yes. So we have that album release July 26th, and then what do we have after that? We have a few local gigs after that in the early August. And then at the end of August, we're going to do a short little, about a week and a half run with a band from up your way, Adamantis from New England. And they're on Cruz del Sur Records. And we're going to do a little run with them starting in Pittsburgh. And then I think we're in Indianapolis, Chicago, Akron, Frederick, Maryland, New York. Oh, I'm missing something somewhere here. Rhode Island. And then we're doing that RPM Fest in Montague, Massachusetts. And then we may have a date on the way home. We're kind of working on that right now. But yeah, basically the last week of September or August into Labor Day weekend, we'll be on the road.
Oh, another thing I wanted to ask is, why did you decide to change the logo with Ironflame? I noticed the first two albums had one logo, and then you decided to go with another one.
Well, it's not that I had one logo and decided to go with another one. The other one was the original wasn't really a logo. It was just like a font.
Yeah.
And again, I didn't put much thought into it. These are things, and it's not the first time I've been at this point where, you do you make a musical decision, and had you known, if you could see in the future and see what things would become, you would do them differently, right? I didn't think that Ironflame was going to end up being anything, so I didn't put a whole heck of a lot of thought into like the image of it or the logo. I didn't even bother coming up with a logo because to me it was just something that was going to be one album and done. So I just used that font, put it in a letterbox, called it good, and moved on. And then, we kept rolling, and I'm like, man, we're a couple albums deep, and we really don't have an identity as far as like our logo goes. We need a logo, so that's why it happened.
Awesome. Yeah. And one thing I also like about Ironflame is you guys got lots of cool merch. I got a poster, a bunch of cool stickers. And that's one thing I always like when bands go like above and beyond with the packaging and all the cool stuff. I really appreciate that with bands. So that's awesome.
I try to, and we have a habit of doing things, and it's only been circumstantial because of the way the first couple albums went. Was I don't know. I find that the metal community is pretty divided on the format that they prefer. There are vinyl guys who really don't like CDs, and there are diehard CD guys who can't stand vinyl. And so I don't know. I acknowledge that, and I try and do something different in each format for each of those groups of people. So one group doesn't necessarily feel left out or slighted. The thing with vinyl is, one side of a vinyl record can only hold so much audio before it really starts to sound bad. So, I have a habit of writing 10 songs, and you can rarely ever fit 10 songs worth of audio on a record. So I end up putting 8 on there. So what I do for the CD fans is I'll put those 2 extra songs on the CD. So there's the incentive there, and I don't put it on any other format. When it with the vinyl, you obviously can't do that. So I try and do something special merchandise-wise to give the vinyl fans something where they feel exclusive too, whether it be a patch, a slip mat, a poster, like a signed photo card from the band, just something that you can't get anywhere other than that format. I just want to be inclusive to everybody. I like vinyl and CD equally for different reasons, but I know not everybody does. So I just kind of want to cater to everybody, make everybody happy when it comes to that.
That's great. Now that about wraps it up for all the questions I have for you today. Is there anything you want before we sign off, or anything you want to promote for Ironflame or any other band?
Well, I mean, every band is doing something. Icarus Witch released our latest album last year, and it's doing really well. No Devil Lived On, and Brimstone is in the process of writing a new record right now. We're still in the tracking stage, but things are chugging along nicely. So I foresee that album coming out either the end of this year or the beginning of next year. I'm constantly juggling things. There's always some crazy heavy metal balls up in the air, man. But wheels are always turning. I just can't sit still.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Andrew. It was great talking to you. I really had a great time. So everybody, that was Andrew from Brimstone Coven, Icarus Witch, and Ironflame. So go check them out. They'll be touring. Go get the record. Great band. So this has been Aaron Ossont from Ossont Battery, Flamekeeper Network. Stay metal, everybody.
For 45 years and keeping Louisville weird, Electric Ladyland has been there for all your eccentricities. While they do offer the best smoking supplies out on the market today, there's a whole lot more to check out. From ashtrays and blacklight posters, to records, incense and burners, and items to stock your metaphysical supply. They're open from 10 to 10, 7 days a week. Located at 2325 Bardstown Road in Louisville, Kentucky, and at electricladyland420.com. Roll out.